Okay, welcome everybody. This is going to be a tutorial on how to use the audio software program, which is LogicProX. I'm going to try to explain this as concise and clear as I can, and hopefully I don't confuse you along the way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open up a new file here from LogicProX. It's going to bring this box. It's going to default as audio, which is what we want. We don't want any input, and we want our output to 1 and 2. So we'll press create. And before we actually get to the process, we'll go through a few preliminaries. So if you press X on the keyboard, it's going to bring up a digital mixer, which gives you this sort of layout. And the first thing we are going to go over are sort of do's and don'ts. So this here is called a track. It displays as this sort of strip here in which your audio files, this is where they're going to be pretty much. This here is called a fader, a volume fader, as well as here, and here, and here. And so what these do is it just changes the volume up or down. The next thing to notice is the stereo out channel and the master channel. And these ones you do not want to touch. You want to leave these at 0. The only faders that you really will be touching are the channel faders, the individual tracks. Above here we have, it's called a loop. If we click on it, it should turn yellow. And we can shorten it. We can move it around wherever we like. And basically, if I play it, it'll constantly keep playing it until I tell it to stop again. We'll be going over a few tools that you'll be using when processing the audio. And in your mixer, over next to EQ, you'll press this empty region here, which will bring it up. And this basically is a frequency range, a representation of a frequency range. So over here by 20 hertz, we have lower, bassier sounds, and over by 20 kilohertz, those are going to be higher pitched, higher frequency sounds. And this is a useful tool to carve out any discrepancies in the sound that you're hearing. So if there's too much bass, I can go ahead and grab this little dot here and move it down. So I'm getting rid of 9.5 decibels at 91 hertz. So you can change this, and it's going to be the same for over on the high end. You can also sweep it out. Okay. The next tool we're going to look at is what is called a loudness meter. And it's going to be under metering, on the mixer, under Audio FX. This displays basically all of your tools or plugins. And we have channel EQ, which we just opened up. And right below it, this empty region, you can click on it to find your other plugins. So we're going to look for the loudness meter, which is under metering. Loudness meter. And it's going to bring up this little tool here. So just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and put in a little sample here. You won't hear any sound because the microphone is on, but this will give you a general idea as to how this plugin works. So I'm going to keep it looped, and I'm going to play it. And what you'll see is a bunch of stuff going on here, a bunch of stuff going on there and there. The M here is going to stand for momentary loudness. the S is going to stand for short-term loudness, and the I is integrated loudness. So this whole meter here measures perceived loudness. As you can see, these two are going on. The M momentary, we're really not going to worry about because it is taking perceived loudness within less than a second. Short term is going to be about 3 seconds, and the integrated is a specific amount of time. So it's a time that you set, which is the purpose of this start and reset button. Mainly focused about the integrated sort of section here, because this is going to take the average from the entire sample that you're listening from, and it's going to average out the perceived loudness for you. So that's the one we're going to be looking at. You just need to play it once, but playing it multiple times until you don't see it move around as much, that's going to be more accurate. So it was reading about negative 16.8 when I played it one time, but it is now settling for about negative 16.9 or negative 17, which is technically the more accurate one. So it looks like it settled on negative 17 decibels. So a 0.2 decibel difference is really not noticeable in the real world, especially at this sort of volume. So you don't need to constantly play it over and over, but if you want to be picky and precise, then you can do that if you'd like. The next one is going to be your multimeter. The multimeter, it does multiple things. We get this little layout here, and this little graph here represents an EQ, essentially. So if I play it, it's just like an EQ, it's just a little bit different. And over here we get sort of something that looks very similar to the loudness meter. I'm going to go ahead and compare these two. And basically we have up here peak and RMS. And the peak value is sort of the highest power that it's going. And it's not the number we're going to look at. We're not really going to be concerned with the peak value. And the RMS value, this stands for root mean squared, so it is also an average of loudness, but it is not the same as the loudness meter. But we also have a loudness meter right here, which is basically the same here, except this one is only displaying it's displaying the integrated and the short-term loudness. So you're not getting the momentary, which we really don't care about. We're mostly concerned about the integrated because we want the average. So that's the number we're going to be concerned with. However, the loudness meter compared to the multimeter's loudness meter section thingy, this one is going to be a little more accurate. It's not very noticeable, but the reason why I say this one is more accurate is because you have the pause and the reset button, and so you have a little more control over the parameters that you're metering. So this one can be good if you're looking at, if you want to look at the integrated as well as the equalizer. So that's why I think this one is it's important. And the last tool, which is the tool that we will be using to manipulate, is called the limiter. So we'll go back into Audio FX. We have all of our plugins here. And we're going to look for a limiter, which is in the dynamics section. Okay, so the limiter, essentially, what it does is it equalizes volume. And what I mean by that is, well, especially in speech, the volume is not uniform. There are peaks and lows. The pitch changes a little bit. So this sort of offsets that. It makes sure that the loudest sounds aren't too loud compared to the quietest sounds. So it's sort of like an equalizer of of amplitude. So we're going to go ahead and keep this on legacy mode. We're going to keep it on a soft knee. The gain is how much volume you want to increase it to. The release is how fast you want to stop that compressing. And the output level, like I said, we don't want anything going past 0. If I didn't say that before, we don't want anything going past 0. So right here we have about -3.8, which is good. But if it happens, and sometimes it does, it will go above 0. So I'm going to raise this a little bit just to show you what that looks like. So if I raise it really high, it goes to 4 decibels higher than 0, which is not good. That's considered bad in this program. Anytime you see something red, it essentially means bad. It's sort of a hint to tell you that something's going wrong. And in this case, we are digitally clipping, which is something we don't want. So, of course, I'm exaggerating this quite a bit. But yeah, anything that is red is bad. And I can exaggerate this more by increasing the gain so much that it even goes higher than 4. I'm going to talk about a few more things that I think are important. The first one is going to be what's called fading. Fading is when you're looking at the audio file here. So if you look here, right here where this line is, which is called the playhead, there's no sound coming in. Essentially, no sound or little to no sound. But if we play it just a little bit here, there's about -47 decibels of sound, which is it's very low. It's not audible, but it is something that we can basically treat it to reduce certain errors. So I believe on the desktops it doesn't work quite like this. Basically, the top right corner, it's going to show this little symbol here. And if you hold down the click button and just drag it, it will make what's a fade. And so basically what this is from here, the volume is at 0, and it's going to rise up gradually instead of abruptly happening here. And so it's important to do this on every single file that you're working on, just for consistency's sake. So I can do it on here as well. And like I said, on the desktop Macs, I don't believe it works this way. I'm using a laptop. But right over here, you can use what's called the fade tool. And so when you hit Command, that icon will show and you'll be able to move it accordingly. So right here, fade tool. And another thing that I believe is important just to reduce any room for error is something called the DC offset. So if we highlight the track and the region, so the track's highlighted and the region's highlighted, I'm going to press E on the keyboard. Drag this up a little bit. Oops. And we'll go to the File tab. And under Functions, there's a button called Remove DC Offset. And basically, if you have a lot of DC offset in the audio track, you will audibly hear some weirdness, some distortion in that. So usually there is less than 1% of DC offset, but it's just to be safe. So if I press that, 0.043 DC offset found. So audibly, it's not really there. So I'm going to remove it. And what that means is basically from this line, which is your direct current, this line right in the middle. Sometimes this whole waveform can be shifted up just a little bit, and that can cause things to sound a little funky. So if you do hear that audibly, then it is a good idea to remove the DC offset. Just as a precautionary measure, I think it's a good habit. Okay, last couple things that you may or may not use is color coding. So if I wanted to make another track, I could just double click here, and I could do it again, just anywhere in this region here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and to copy, you're going to hold down Option, and then click this and drag, and let go of the stick, or let go of the mouse. So I'll do it again, holding Option, click and drag, let go. So it's going to copy the same audio file, and that'll be important a little bit later. But something to help keep organized is naming your audio. So if I click here where the words are, I can rename it. So find the lipstick, I can name anything here if I just double click on it. You can also color code, and for that you're going to press Option C, and it'll bring up this color board. So I'm going to highlight this, and let's see, I think light blue would be nice, and I'll go down here, select that, purple, and maybe pink. So this just helps you to be a little bit organized in your work, because you will probably have around 20 of these regions of these audio files. So color coding is important, I think. And lastly are the solo and mute buttons, which are going to be found here. You can also press M or S while highlighted. So if I press M, it's going to mute that single track. If I press M again, it'll unmute it. Solo or S allows you to just hear the track by itself, and I can press it again to unsolo it. Okay. And some other handy things is if you go towards the bottom of the region, you can basically cut out whatever you want. So if I just wanted lipstick, which you can't hear, but this is lip and this is stick and this is find the. But if I just wanted this part, I could highlight this on the bottom left corner or bottom right corner, any bottom corner, hold it and just drag it until it gets here, and now I just have this that I'm working with. And if you ever make a mistake, you can always go back, and if you make a mistake like accidentally delete it, you can always undo that by going to undo delete or Command Z. That is going to be basically it for the preliminaries. I will show you how to actually process this from start to finish, just to give you the clearest idea that I can of how to go about this.